Lin Wood filed an affidavit because he wants to still be an attorney out of the Eastern District of New York. So as we know, Lin Wood is licensed to practice law in Georgia. And what attorneys can do around the country is they can get admitted into a different court, a different jurisdiction, as what's called pro hac vice, which means, yeah, you're not licensed in that state, but you're kind of working with another attorney who is licensed, and you're applying to go practice law in there because you've got a particular skill set. And so Lin Wood has been the subject of a lot of controversy. I mean, I'm not sure that Facebook even let us broadcast today because that was in our description. His name was. I don't know if that's the real story here or what the deal is, but we'll figure that out. But the point is, he's been kind of gone, right? He's off of Twitter. He's got, I think, one lawsuit still pending in the U.S. Supreme Court, which is going to be up for a writ for certiorari. But he filed this new motion. It's called an affidavit yesterday in the Eastern District of New York. And it was pretty interesting as I was reading through it. And I want to explain what's going on here. So as you can see, filed yesterday, 8 pages long. Not going to spend a ton of time going through the entirety of it, but I did clip around. And it says here, there's a lawsuit where it's Rosalind La Liberté, who is the plaintiff. So it's this person suing Joy Reid, who is the defendant. And this is a defamation case. And what this document says is Lin Wood is opposing the motion to revoke his pro hac vice status. Okay, he was admitted here into this court in the Eastern District of New York to represent Rosalind La Liberté. And now Joy Reid and her defense attorneys are trying to get him off of the case. He's saying, I am opposing that motion. You should allow me to continue representing her. And now what's been going on with him is everybody around the country is trying to get him removed from things. I think his alma mater booted him out. I think other individuals have basically just said, we don't want anything to do with you. I think that the Georgia State Bar has mandated some mental health screening and all of this stuff. And, you know, I don't really have much of an opinion on that other than just to point out what he is doing in this affidavit. And he's basically doubling down on all of these claims. And I've been very critical of Lin Wood for a long time, really since his involvement in the Rittenhouse case. I didn't think he was qualified to be involved in the Rittenhouse case. I didn't think that he had any criminal experience relevant to performance on that case, and he's no longer involved. I thought that it was sort of more harm than good from his public persona that was ultimately going to result in harm to Kyle. And I had some issues with that. And so I've been pretty critical about Lin for a long period of time, but I do like what's happening here because he's just sticking to the free speech concept. And I'm not real sure how far it's going to go or how successful it's going to be, but I just like the fact that he's fighting for it. That he's saying, nope, it's free speech. If I want to say loony, wacky things out there, if I want to just make wild, outlandish claims, I'm free to do that. Why? Free speech. It's an argument I can get behind. I don't even have to agree with anything that he says, but just the fact that he's going to be saying, hey, this is America. I can say whatever I want. I can say things like Mike Pence is a traitor. I can say John Roberts is a pedophile. I can say those things. Right? Because it's free speech. And I'm somebody who is a big proponent of free speech. You're free to say untruthful things. You're free to say dangerous things. You're free to say controversial statements. You're free to give strong, inaccurate opinions. You're allowed to do that in this country. I know many people think that that's not okay these days. Everything's dangerous. Everything is too triggering. Right? We're having to just be very careful with our speech every which way. And I don't like how that's going. So I'm not agreeing or endorsing Lin Wood in his statements, the content of his statements. I think they're a little bit off the wall, quite frankly. But he's allowed to say those things. If he believes those things and they're not defamatory, if they don't violate the law, if they're not an incitement, as long as they're within the confines of free speech, they can be as wacky and outlandish and kind of disgusting language, right? He's allowed to say that stuff. So he's pushing the bounds of free speech, which I can appreciate. All right, so enough of that. Let's get into it. He says, I'm a member of good standing of the Bar of the State of Georgia, the principal and sole shareholder of L. Lin Wood, lead counsel for Rosalind Liberté in this action. My admission pro hac vice was granted by this court back in 2018. I submit this affidavit in opposition to the motion made by the defendant, Joy Reid, for an order revoking my admission. So they're trying to get him off this case. He says, Miss Liberté contacted me on July 1. She searched the internet for me, recognized me as an experienced defamation lawyer. I gave her a phone call. She hired me to represent her in a defamation matter. Since that date, I already sent a cease and desist letter, which you'll see as an exhibit. And then what he's doing, so the original document that I'm not going to spend much time on is they have this sort of laundry list. They go through this list and they say, well, look how crazy Lin Wood is. He said this, he said this, he said this. Paragraph 6 said this, paragraph 7 said this, and he's responding to all of their allegations. We don't really need to know what they said originally because he kind of summarizes it for us. And here's what he's talking about in his first response. I deny and dispute the allegations in paragraph 6 of the declaration. Prior to November 3rd, I was a strong and vocal supporter of the re-election of President Trump. At the request of the president, I met with him on March 11th in the Oval Office. Subsequent to the November 3rd election, I've continued to exercise my First Amendment right to free speech to support the president. I have also exercised my right to advocate for protection of the Bill of Rights, honest elections, and against pedophilia and child sex trafficking. I have also received credible evidence of serious wrongdoing by high-ranking government officials, which I have brought to the attention of the public and to federal law enforcement officials, which we still haven't seen yet, right? I mean, where is that stuff? The evidence of wrongdoing includes evidence of potentially serious crimes perpetrated by the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. Okay, folks, this is under oath in a district court of law, right? He's making this statement now. And a lot of these statements previously were on Twitter. They were on, Parler or Telegram, any of these other platforms, right? Now he's saying this in writing under oath. So I'm very curious to see whether or not the judge is going to say, all right, what do you got? Okay, show us that evidence. He goes on. He denies another claim in paragraph 7. He says, I conducted a press conference with Sidney Powell, the attorney for Michael Flynn. I exercised my right of free speech. I exercised my right of free speech and did urge attendees to consider engaging in acts of nonviolent freedom and assembly and the right to publicly protest acts and inactions by the governor of Georgia and the Secretary of State. I'm in possession of credible evidence supporting criminal acts by these Georgia officials. So he's kind of saying, it's true, right? In the original complaint, they're saying this guy's off the wall. And he's saying, no, it's true, actually. I've got evidence of that. Evidence of that, evidence of this one. He continues, I deny and dispute allegations. He says, my use of Twitter was an exercise of my right of free speech. The declaration cherry picks a few of my tweets out of context of the body of social messages on Twitter as I post about my politics, my religious faith, my rescue puppies, photos of my properties, other matters of interest to me. I like to write, and I have used social media as a platform for my writing on a variety of topics. It's just writing. All right. I deny and dispute the allegations in paragraph 9. My tweet about former Vice President Mike Pence was protected rhetorical and political hyperbole. See Watts versus United States, 394 U.S. 705, a 1969 case. All right, so he's citing it, and he's a pretty renowned defamation lawyer. So I haven't looked that case up, but it might be worthwhile. He goes on, paragraph 10. I did not attend the rally in support of the president on January 6th. I was not involved whatsoever in the planning of the rally or the incident at Congress that day, based on publicly available information. The events and participants of the January 6th incident in Congress is disputed and unresolved at the present time. What is undisputed is I was not involved. My tweet was protected speech. I deny and dispute the allegations. I am in possession of credible evidence to support my statements about Pence and Rod Rosenstein, as well as information about the death of Seth Rich. I deny and dispute allegations. I'm in possession of evidence to support my statements about Mike Pence. He's laying this all out there for federal court. The authenticity of the alleged social account of Ashley Babbitt has not been established by admission evidence and remains unproven and disputed. I deny the disputed allegations. I have no firsthand knowledge of the 3 percenters or QAnon. I am not responsible for the characterizations of Ms. Powell. He says, my Twitter account was terminated on January 7th. After that date, many Twitter accounts of Trump supporters have been terminated. I have credible evidence to support my statements about Pence. My tweet is protected speech. So he's just responding to all of their claims. I presently post on Telegrams. My posts are protected speech. It's protected rhetorical and political hyperbole. He's once again referencing Watts. He says, I have credible evidence to support the truth of my description of former Vice President Pence as a traitor. I happen to like Mike Pence, but we'll see. We'll see if he's got that evidence. He says, I deny and dispute allegations as stated. I've turned over whistleblower evidence to the U.S. Secret Service related to Mike Pence and other high-ranking officials. If desired by this court, I am prepared to file that evidence along with a considerable amount of evidence of the election fraud. This is a dangerous affidavit, isn't it? I am not doing so at this time. I do not believe those issues are relevant to the present motion, which I believe is nothing more than an effort to smear my reputation and interfere with the plaintiff's constitutional right to have counsel. He says he disputes the allegations. My posts are protected speech. I have credible whistleblower evidence to support my truth of my statements. I have not received, this is interesting, I have not received a retraction demand from Justice Roberts or his counsel. He has not made any claim to date that my posts are false or defamatory. Former Vice President Mike Pence, Rod Rosenstein have also not sent retraction demands or claims that my posts are concerning them are false or defamatory. He says, any evidence that I was involved in January 6th is errant nonsense with no factual support. I have at all times in this action sought to comply with the rules. I will continue to do so. The body of my life's work as a lawyer who practiced pro hoc vice in over 25 states demonstrates that I adhere to the highest standards of my profession. Signed off on by Lin Wood, notarized, submitted on the 7th, filed yesterday. So we'll see where that goes. You know, I am a big proponent of free speech here. I don't endorse what Lin Wood said. I don't agree with what Lin Wood said. I don't agree with his characterization of, I've not seen any evidence of any of it, right? At this point in time, all this stuff is just words on a page, but I think he's entitled to say them. You can have disagreements about the wisdom of those statements, but I think he's allowed to say them, and we're going to see what this court does. Are they going to throw him off the case because of his political statements? It's an interesting issue. We'll see where it goes.